Hello, my name is Molly Prower. I'm a Master's of Business Science student at Rutgers University, and today I'm here to talk to you about Pokémon in the context of visual analytics. So what exactly is Pokémon? Pokémon at its core is a franchise of multiple games for consoles and mobile phones created in 1995 by someone who is now very rich, Satoshi Tajiri. Since the introduction of Pokémon, or Pocket Monsters in Japan, it has branched out to form from the first 3 games on the Nintendo Game Boy to include multiple different types of video games, TV shows, movies, and even international competitions for its video and card games. Today we'll be focusing on the main set of video games. In these games, the player is called a trainer. The goal of the game is to catch, trade, and train Pokémon, fictional creatures similar to animals or inanimate objects that we find in the real world, and become the strongest Pokémon trainer in the world where the game takes place. As of now, there are 890 different Pokémon spread out over 8 series of games, otherwise known as generations. The dataset that I'm using today is from Kaggle.com. Kaggle.com is a self-described Airbnb for data scientists. It is a crowdsourced repository for datasets, challenges, and sharing information related to data science. The information from the dataset was scraped from Cerebi.net, a fan-driven database for Pokémon information. Information in this presentation was also taken from both Cerebi.net and Bulbapedia, which is another fan-driven Pokémon database. The dataset included all the information about each of the 802 Pokémon from the first 7 games, first 7 generations, such as type, battle, statistics, catch rate, name, generation, and so on. We're going to be looking at information from the first 7 generations of games. Currently there are 8, but since those games had just come out recently, that data was unavailable at the time of this recording. We'll also not be covering Pokémon Go, and we'll not be taking into account any of the Mega or Ultra evolutions of the Pokémon themselves. So what do we want to know about Pokémon? I told you about the purpose of playing a Pokémon game, which is to become the very best. That is, to become the trainer with the strongest team of Pokémon in order to defeat the reigning Pokémon champion in that game. Once the game is completed, the player can continue playing the game in order to catch very powerful Pokémon, known as legendaries, or play against their friends or other players online. In order to win battles, one must have a strong Pokémon team. Because of this, I set out to determine what the most powerful Pokémon are. Before we get into how to find the most powerful Pokémon, we need to understand a few basics about them. Pokémon are classified into types. There are 18 main types of Pokémon. Pokémon can, but do not always, have 2 types assigned to them, for example, grass and bug. This leaves us with 166 different combinations of Pokémon as of Generation 7. To get this number, I created a calculated field that combined the first and second, if there was a second type of Pokémon, into one field. I created a tree map for each of the main types, changing the metric of the names to count, and placed them onto a dashboard. From this we can see that water and normal are the most abundant Pokémon, with 61 different Pokémon classified with normal or water as their first type. Pokémon can also be weak or strong against other types in battle. For example, water are weak to grass types. Pokémon will either do half damage, 0.5, normal damage, 1, double damage, 2, or have no effect against another type. There's a very famous chart among Pokémon trainers that I was tempted to recreate showing this breakdown, but given my skill in the dataset, I was not able to perfectly reproduce it. Instead, I created this one. The Pokémon to the left is the defending Pokémon, while the Pokémon type on the bottom is the attacking. In order to create this chart, I pulled out one of each type of Pokémon with only one type assigned to it. I then used the assigned type values average to pull out the attack value of each of those types. Here we can see that by type, fire and fighting Pokémon have the advantage over the most types of Pokémon, while grass and bug type Pokémon have the least amount of advantage over others. So now that we have a little bit of background on Pokémon and their types, we can focus on Pokémon as individuals and start to measure their power. But how do we do that? Well, Pokémon have 5 different battle stats that are unique to each Pokémon. There's attack and defense, which measure against physical moves. There's also special attack and special defense, which measure against special moves. Special moves are a predetermined set of moves that Pokémon learn. Lastly, there is speed. Pokémon with higher speeds will take their turn in battle before Pokémon with lower speeds. Pokémon have other attributes like steps to hatch an egg and catch rate, but those are not stats that will determine how a Pokémon will do in battle. Therefore, I decided that a Pokémon's power is determined by measuring the 2 attack, the 2 defense, and speed values. Since attack, special attack, defense, and special defense are separate stats, I created calculated fields to combine them. Also, since there are over 802 Pokémon, I created another field to remove the Pokémon whose total numbers of attack, defense, and speed were under 400. This is an arbitrary number that I picked in order to get a variety of top Pokémon. I then separated them by generations. Separating Pokemon by generations is important because not every Pokemon is available in every game. There are ways to import Pokemon from one generation of a game to another, but for the casual player, they will normally only be using the Pokemon available in that generation. Secondly, in tournament play, sometimes Pokemon from other generations are not allowed to be used. We can see that from this chart that depending on the stat that we're looking at, we get very different results for the top Pokemon in almost every generation. However, we need to look at these stats as a whole. To do that, I created another calculated field that took all the attack, defense, and speed stats and combined them. I created this dashboard to showcase the strongest Pokemon of each generation and the strongest Pokemon overall. I also separated the strongest into two categories, one including all the Pokemon and one containing only non-legendary Pokemon. As mentioned, legendary Pokemon are special Pokemon that a trainer can catch only by beating the game they're playing or downloading the Pokemon during a special event. These Pokemon are the hardest to catch and collect, so not a lot of casual players have them. Also, during some tournaments, they're not even allowed to be used as part of your team. I thought breaking them up in this way would be beneficial to most trainers. Here we can see that Generation 3 has the most strong Pokemon, and that Rayquaza, Mewtwo, and Groudon and Kyogre are the strongest Pokemon overall. I then created a second dashboard that referenced all of the Pokemon together. This dashboard is filterable by generation and Pokemon name so that a trainer can look up any Pokemon they want to and view their stats. This dashboard would come in handy for building a strong, rounded Pokemon team for any trainer. I wanted to take a closer look at Pokemon as a whole to see what I could learn. By using scatter plots, we're able to see some outliers and learn information about Pokemon that we didn't see before. However, like here we can see that Shuckle, he has the highest defense stat of all the Pokemon. However, his attack is one of the lowest. This doesn't mean he should be counted out though. With a defense like that, he may work on your team as a tank, or a Pokemon that can take a lot of damage. An example of this is that Pachirisu, who I point out here in the lower range of power, once tanked Groudon's most powerful move in a championship battle, winning the tournament for that trainer. We can also see that Groudon and Kyogre, tied for third most powerful Pokemon, have the exact same stats. I did the same chart with speed and attack and defense. We see here that Shuckle's speed is very low, but in order to tank, you don't need to go first. Looking at these two charts can help a trainer see how their Pokemon or Pokemon they're interested in compare against the whole as a population. Overall, in these two charts, we can see that there's a definite trend of weak to strong Pokemon with a few exceptions. We can easily see which Pokemon would be beneficial in battle and which would not. The outliers with the higher numbers should be investigated further as to how they could be used to balance a strong team. After finding the most powerful Pokemon, I had one more question to answer. What is the most powerful starting Pokemon? At the beginning of each game, a trainer is given the option to pick one of 3 starting Pokemon to start their journey with. These Pokemon are always either fire, grass, or water type, and they all have 3 different evolutions. The Pokemon that the trainer does not pick are usually not seen in the game again and can only be obtained by trading with another player. This makes the decision of which starting Pokemon to pick crucial to how a trainer plays their game. While some people, such as myself, might pick their starting Pokemon based on a favorite type or how they look, others may want to pick the most powerful off the bat. I use the same attack, defense, and speed combination to look at all 7 generations of starting Pokemon's power and their power at their evolved levels. As it turned out, with the exception of Greninja, Froakie's evolved form, all the starting Pokemon in both their initial and evolved form are comparable in power. This shows us that when picking a starting Pokemon, it's okay to go with your favorites. So what did we learn? Looking strictly at the numbers, Rayquaza, Mewtwo, and Groudon and Kyogre are the strongest Pokemon overall. In the non-legendary category, Metagross, Salamence, and Tyranitar are the 3 strongest. Overall, choosing a Pokemon team has a lot of complexities to it. For example, it's not just about power, it's also about the type of Pokemon and the types of moves that they can use and the types of moves that you can teach them. However, since this is such a huge variance across the different games and the amount of different moves there are, the only real statistics that we can use to find which are the most powerful are those battle stats. Power is definitely the most important thing to consider, having said all that. However, when it comes to just playing the game or playing against friends, having fun with your favorite Pokemon is definitely more important. Either way, there's no right way to play as long as you try to catch them all. I hope you've enjoyed our look into Pokemon today, and I implore you to have fun with the dashboards that I've created. If you learn anything new, please let me know, and if you have a shiny Mawile to trade, please give me a call. Thanks!